Hello, everyone. There have been some exciting changes on the core protocol side during last week, especially with incentivized network launch. And today we'll be sharing that and plans for the immediate future from our team. And Lucian, do you want to be the first one today?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Okay, so last week I have 3 PRs. Two of them are just minor changes. So I'll just skip them and focus on this substantial one. Okay, this PR is to verify the fault proof completely on the client, instead of the previous runtime external solution. So the core idea is to perform a pre-extrinsic validation, before doing the regular extrinsic validation. Okay, let me pull the. So basically, this is the typical regular validated transaction, which we are called into the runtime API. Now we perform pre-validation before doing this. Okay, it's to verify the fault proof. During this PR, I do encounter a really weird issue, which is actually this commit. I don't know why, but the symptom is before this commit, the when they retrieve, want to fetch the runtime code using this runtime API, this runtime API code just broken. It's totally broken, and it also affect other components. Like even Tokyo is simply unable to behave as expected, because the serious executor test is actually wrapped in a timeout. If this test keeps running for over 600 seconds, it will just panic. But this one, you will see it never ends, keeps running until GitHub CI stops it for 6 hours. So I don't know why. If you try to fetch the runtime code inside this execution proof check, everything, a lot of things, not everything, a lot of them will just be become broken.
How easy it
So
is to reproduce?
I have a test. If you run this commit before this, if I add, let me okay. If you run the test in this commit, you will see.
Okay, so I should be able to just
forever.
go back to that and try to run it and it will fail.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you create an issue about that, please, so I can also take a look?
Okay, sure. Yeah. I spent a lot of time debugging this, and finally find that it's just that this runtime API is totally broken. I don't know why.
I just feel like we might add another runtime API later of a similar kind, and it will also fail. So it would be nice to know what's actually happening.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'll create the issue. Actually, not this one. The particular method, the whole methods, all the methods in this executor API is broken. Not just this particular one. I tried the other ones. It's broken as well.
Really strange.
I spent a lot of time debugging this to find which where it actually becomes problematic. So I think the another one is the another point was noting is that we need also to verify the fraud proof while importing the block because now we move the fraud proof verification to the client side entirely. So we also need to verify it in the consensus stage, which I believe is okay. I believe is subspace. Okay, this one is here to verify this before, like if we have this experiencing, we'll try to verify if there's a fraud proof. So yeah, any questions, comments? I think this is digest of this PR.
Yeah, I think long term it would be interesting to see how hard it is to compile the whole bunch of stuff that are related to this verification into the runtime and make it noisily compatible. Because essentially it's like a stateless check. We have all of the inputs that we need. It just doesn't compile.
Actually, I think it will be like really, really significant because this you need to make this execution proof check like run in no STD. Currently, it's just a STD. It's in substrate. So you will. Yeah.
I mean, it should be possible. I know it's difficult, but it should be.
Yeah. It should be possible. Just how much effort we need to like put into it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Ideally, if it's possible and it can be done right now, that will be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah. We would need to have transaction pool wrapper.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe one day.
Yeah, I think that is everything.
Hey, Lu Cheng, for
Yeah.
next steps, how much more effort do you think you'll need to put into this verification process before we can start working on namespace execution?
Before that, I would like to ask, do we want to launch the executor as is against the current testnet, or will do after the named space?
I think it would be good to launch it. If I recall, there were some other issues that we had to resolve, but is this the last one? This client-side fraud proof verification?
I think this is the last one that blocks the executor launch.
Yeah, I don't recall anything else for like the initial version.
Yeah.
Okay. And all we have to do is spin up one executor, and then it will just start submitting bundles and ERs to the farmer network.
If you want to do
Yes.
that on the actual Gemini, we will need to unlock the transactions on the runtime level because we blocked it.
Yeah, if we decide to launch the executor.
Yeah.
So that's just a forkless runtime upgrade.
Yeah.
How soon do you think that would be ready, Lu Chen, to test?
I still need some time to test it locally. And if we do want to launch it, I believe we can do it this week.
Okay. So if we had not had so many issues over the last week with having to restart Gemini and other bugs, I would say go for it. But I would prefer to test it in a separate network first.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Let's discuss that separately. So let's just plan to resolve this issue, and then we can start doing some planning for namespace execution. We're going to talk about that at the integration sync tomorrow. Actually, I need you to be there for that. And then we can work separately. Nazar, probably you and I and Alexi might need to have a discussion about setting up a test separate test network that we could test it on.
Okay. I haven't like been invited to the integration sync, I believe.
I'll send you an invite right now.
Okay, great.
All right. I think that's all on this side of Fluid Chain. Shamil, you're next on my screen.
Okay, sure. Can you see it?
Yes.
So last week I was working on the get piece by range method for the DSL, and for this moment I fixed almost all the comments from Nazar and Ivan, and I want to briefly discuss the algorithm and the issue that arises from it. So the methods basically allows to get pieces from farmers requested by some range. We calculated the middle of that range, and using the DHT academy algorithm, we get closest peers for this particular middle of the range, and then we select peers via some request response protocol. And it works. However, our current implementation has some issues that the academy by default hashes all keys that involved in this in its algorithm. For example, it hashes the peer ID for each node, and it hashes the key, all the keys that it can search via the academy DHT. So for what it means for us that we use our 32 bytes peer ID and plot our data using this hash. However, we can't find this range anymore because peer ID will be hashed again. The same with the key that we use to look up that. Whenever we get this middle of the range, we also hash it via the academia code. It could be easily patched from the key side using very small code, but from the farmer side, from the peer ID side, it could be less convenient and will invoke more code on the P2P patching. So I want to discuss whether we should do this patch, or we have some another ways to work around it.
Yeah, it's not like Kademlia, it's just cat DHT the way they implemented it in the
Yes.
peer-to-peer
Also,
specifically.
I requested this feature from the libp2p, and they answered a little bit, but I don't see that a lot of work on that side. So it's up to us for now. So please, Nazar.
Yeah, so the basic problem is that instead of looking a piece against ID, which are pre-images, we are looking a hash of the piece index, or like hash of the piece index against the hash of the public key, which are like completely different domains after they are mapped with the hash function. So the nodes that we are finding there, like except it's like an impossible case where this is an exact match, we are like finding completely random peers in practice.
Yes, from the just DSN side, it's very easy to double hash the peer ID on the plot creation. But we have already, for example, it's not required by the protocol, as Nazar mentioned. It's weird to make the protocol based on the academic implementation. And the second issue is that we already have a farmer plot in the Gemini, so it's not very convenient to restart all the farmers. So please, Nazar.
Yeah, it would be a break and change if you do something like that.
Is it possible to make those changes only for the new farmers? So half of the network will work via archival node, and half of the network will work via DSN based on the farmer version.
Well, then I feel like this is a security concern at this point. if you're allowing two different kinds of plots?
Yeah, we really don't want to try to support different plotting algorithms. We just want to support one at a time, different architectures. My suggestion, um, I mean, I've never worked with libp2p, so I don't know how open they are to taking changes, but just from experience with parity, we could be waiting a very long time if they even accept it. I agree that it doesn't make a lot of sense to reboot the network just for this, but maybe we could hold on this change until the next time we do a hard fork, which I expect will be a few weeks to a month.
Yes.
And then just do the double hashing on our side for the node IDs. I mean, it's not pretty, granted, but it's not like it's not a huge change. I mean, it's not like a security risk or anything like that. So that would be my suggestion.
So there is another aspect to consider, the fact that we already had to use the peer-to-peer fork just so we can support the crypto that we need. And with that in mind, it might not be that bad to actually add another patch on top and just support what we need.
Yes, I want to add some small patch for that, which would be the non-hashing key from the lookup key side. Remember that we need to prevent two hashing, one from PID hash and the second one from the key hashing. So preventing key hashing would be a relatively small patch, and I'm okay with that. But tweaking the libp2p would be, I would say, invoke necessary of testing the libp2p itself, which I don't think that we need to do, because the change for the non-hashing of PID will invoke some deep parts of Kademlia, and it will require testing by itself.
I think if you are doing it in all places, you should consistently just change from one to another. I don't expect any big differences, honestly.
Probably, but we're still messing with core Kademlia.
Right, but they have a bunch of tests for everything. So if you run the whole, if you change the hashing and run the whole battery of tests that they have and nothing breaks, I'm fairly confident it will work, because I don't see why not.
What if we estimate our next fork for the testnet, and if it will be, for example, a month from now that I will make the changes you propose, and if it's only 2 weeks, then I will just wait for the fork. What do you think about that, Nazar?
I'm not sure we will have a fork in 2 weeks.
Okay, I just heard it from Jeremiah.
Yeah, I just don't expect we will have something so worthwhile that would require a hard fork and would justify a hard fork. I mean, ideally, we would deploy all of the changes without breaking
Probably
anything.
I missed something. I just heard that Jeremiah proposed a fork.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't saying that we had a planned fork, just that it could happen that we might have another bug that might require us to reset the network, and that could happen at any time, basically. But that's all I'm saying. Opportunistically.
Okay. So if I understood it properly, I would create 2 patches, one from the key side and another one from the PID side.
I'm not sure we need to. Well, yeah, I think it should be part of the same patch, but I do understand that the conversion into the key is already in there and it works in a specific way. So yeah. In Substrate, there are these methods like unchecked from, where you can just specify bytes and it will just create an instance of whatever from bytes. So you can take an array of bytes and create a signature instance of it, even though that might not be a valid signature. So we could have something like unchecked from on the key, where you can just recreate the key from whatever bytes you supply, and then
yes, this is exactly what I'm going to add to the Rust implementation.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just make it as one commit or one pull request together.
Yes, and the second one is for PID. I need to create some code that will change the logic of that.
Yeah, some kind of config parameter.
Config parameter, yes, whether we change or not this PID.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, long term, how many more changes we would require to peer-to-peer. There are a few things in CAD-DHT that are not necessary. They have this notion of providers and records that can be put into that. In our case, it's implicit, and we're just abusing it. for retrieval, but it's not actually what we need. So maybe we'll just like have our limited kademlia
Okay,
for it
and
at
I
some
have
point in the future.
one small question about that. Having that I implemented both changes, and let's say a month from now we get our hard fork, can I expect that we will roll back one of the patches, just to simplify the code
Mm,
and invoke the double hashing on the farmer side?
I don't see how it fundamentally fixes the problem, though.
It would the second patch for the key is relatively lightweight and very easy to apply. So I don't expect any problems with that. So if we just keep this one, it will be much better to upgrade for next P2P version.
Let's see how it goes. I think if you implement the way we need it according to the protocol, it wouldn't be really justified to change the protocol later just to make rebasing the peer-to-peer easier.
Okay,
considering we might fork the whole KDHT at some point in the future.
Okay, makes sense. So my plan for this week is to implement those patches. After that, probably integration with Farmer with Ivan, and later discussing how to test Farmer and DSN. So that's it.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah, just to clarify, am I getting it right that we can't even test with the current like farmer setup the DSN if we want to, right? Because of the rehashing of the peer ID.
Yes, exactly. Without those patches to the libp2p, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
I mean, we can do limited testing in a sense that if the farmer is containing the whole history of the blockchain, then you can look up any farmer and you can just test the workflow, but it will not actually find the correct peer if it's a partial history.
Yeah, I guess there's no point of Kademlia, man.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well, we might want to retain it. I mean, we've talked about building a caching layer on top of it, on top of our cold storage layer that could use Kademlia. So, I guess let's not get too eager with the knife here.
No, Kademlia will definitely stay in the sense that we need to have a way to look up peers and like extend our routing table. And Kademlia is one of the very few, I believe, if not the only one, method to actually like explore the network and like do random walks and
you mean DHT, not Kademlia?
Yeah. Well, KDHT.
It can be short, but it's just less efficient.
I mean, what's available in in peer-to-peer out of the box?
Okay.
Like the methods that they have. That's probably the only one like method that you can actually do to extend your routing table. So we'll have that in some form, but we might like strip it down or like fork a little bit, but we'll see. Hopefully we don't have to do that. Hopefully we can just convince the upstream that there is a use case for this and make it like optional to work one way or the other. That would be ideal, so we can cooperate with them rather than forking each other.
Isn't there a libp2p community call this week or next week?
It was last week, but I was at the conference. I was speaking right at the time, so I wasn't able to attend.
Guess we need to start campaigning there.
Yeah. There will be next week, so I'll try to talk to them. Okay, thanks, Shamil. Ivan, you were commenting. Let's go with you next.
Yeah, sure. I guess my stuff is mostly related to the DSN. Yeah, let me just share my screen. Yeah, here it is. So last week I was mainly working on the finalizing the mock DSN sync for the farmer. So basically here we with Shamil discussed the API of the DSN, like how it would look from the farmer side. So basically it looks like this. Yeah, we just have one single method which to which we supply the range of the piece index hashes which we want to query, and we get the some kind of stream which will output with some form of structure with the pieces to plot. Yeah, but basically it contains the vector of pieces and the vector of indexes. Yeah, and with that, I just created the sync algorithm, which queries all of the all of the piece index hash space for the pieces until either it reaches the end of it or just gets um, the signal to stop from the farmer. I mean from the archiving. Yeah. So I guess that's all from the from the SPR. Apart from that, I was also working on the integration for the upcoming DSNPR from Vishamil. I mean, we need to supply the pieces to the DSN in order to for all the farmers to sync, and this PR just basically creates some just another command for us to query some number of the piece indexes which we have stored in the plot. And yeah, with that, we can create, we can query all of the pieces which are sequential in our plot. Yeah. Yeah, so here's some tests, for example, for that. So we can just call the function get sequential pieces. Yeah, and it will return the pieces with indexes. Yeah. Yeah, it would be helpful for VDSN. Yeah. Apart from that, there were two minor issues. One of which was reported by the user. He basically forgot to supply the G or T suffix for his storage on the farmer, and we decided to go with limiting of how many storage. Yeah, we basically restricted the amount of storage which user needs to supply, like more than 1 MB, and printed the help message. The plot size is too small. Yeah, maybe you meant the G or T. Yeah, and apart from that, there was a minor PR with removing the CUDA feature in our sloth library. It was basically superseded by the with the OpenCL. Yeah, I also updated some docs, so it will the CUDA and NVIDIA support will be still there. It's just that yeah, OpenCL will be used for that from now on. Yeah, and apart from that, I also just published today draft PR with migration from the RocksDB to PartyDB. It is draft right now because there is one issue with that right now. Yeah. Overall, the PartyDB and RocksDB differ in the API a bit, but overall it's still the same. But the issue with that is that we need to yeah, there's a to do there. Yeah, I just find it. Yeah. So here it is. Basically, we used for the updates of the max distance cache in the plot. We used um, row iterator of the RocksDB, and the thing is that it supports going backwards. Yeah, as RocksDB inside of it, it's just a battery map. Yeah, and the um, yeah, and PartyDB it can support both just a regular map and the B tree map, B tree index map. Yeah, but it doesn't support going backwards with its iterator. Yeah, which is unfortunate. I looked at the sources though. It can be made to support. It's just that there was no use case, I guess, yet with that. Yeah, and I just had a question with that. Should I spend some time on implementing that or not? Yeah, there was some progress with that. I benchmarked a bit the several iterations of the migration. So basically, I just migrated at once object mappings. Yeah, and the thing was that yeah, there is a bit different usage of the disk, which is weird. Yeah, as after the migration of both object mapping and commitments, yeah, it used the same amount of data. Yeah, but overall, the, like, for example, recommitment speed, it was boosted like on I guess 30 or 40%. Yeah, and yeah, I guess that's kind of it from this PR. Yeah.
So on the
Could you test
compression
that on?
side, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nazar. Sorry.
On the compression side, I don't think we need compression because this data is inherently random, so it will not compress very well regardless. And on the like, generally, I'm impressed that it actually fits our use case, parity DB, even though not like 100%. And it would be really, really exciting if we can remove it both from the node, which is almost there and already approved upstream, and from Farmer. So you can remove this big chunk of C++ that takes a long time to compile completely. That would be really, really good. I think it's worthwhile to at least open a ticket in ParityDB and see if they're open to having reverse iteration. They might not be, just because it's a very purpose-built database for a very specific use case, and they kind of want to make it minimal. But maybe if it's not a very big change and we can implement it for them, they might be open to it. That would be ideal, actually.
I think overall, I mean, it fits like overall design as I looked at the sources of that. It's just that the current iterator is not it doesn't support like going backwards. Yeah,
so
overall,
physically the layout doesn't need to change. It's just the API that you need to expose.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And overall, talking about the compression, it can be like turned off. It's just that I looked at the cargo toml of the farmer. There was a snappy compression enabled for the RocksDB. This is what I remember. Like there was a feature enabled.
The only reason for that was that that feature was the same as used in Substrate itself. So that if you do cd crate / subspace farmer, you try to compile it, it will not recompile the RocksDB because suddenly that feature flag was disabled.
Oh,
so just like going back and forth between crates, I just wanted to make it consistent. That's the only reason.
Oh, makes sense. Man. Yeah, I will disable the compression. Yeah, but overall, I guess it doesn't impact performance that much.
It should even be faster if you disable compression.
Yeah,
because...
yeah, but that's the point. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a small question. Sorry for interrupt. For a long time, ParityDB was in testing mode. Is it mature enough at the moment?
We've actually enforced it in the node implementation. I did open one issue that I think might be related, but it might also be just the artifact of how the networking is connected to some of the blockchain parts in Substrate. Overall, they have this issue that they wanted to switch to ParityDB by default in Q1. It is actually default on the type level of data structures in Substrate, but it's not default in the CLI interface for whatever reason. So our desktop application actually used ParityDB since like December or even before that, but we didn't use it in the CLI, but now we are using it in CLI as well. So we are using it across the board. This is something they want to switch to eventually. I believe it doesn't support some of the features, or they didn't migrate something in Polkadot because
it's production ready and we're pretty confident in it.
Basically,
okay,
yes. And I have a pull request upstream that allows you to disable RocksDB physically from Substrate, like disable functionality completely, and they already approved it. So this is something they're looking forward to as well.
Do we know if it's gone through the audit process with SR Labs?
I don't know, and I'm not also sure how much security that needs. Let me see.
Yeah, just something we should probably ask them on our next sync in the chat.
Yeah,
just
I would imagine it went through some review, but nothing stated explicitly.
Yeah. Ivan, when you did this testing, this new benchmarking, what type of disk was that on? I
was testing on SSD, like for now. I had plans with testing on the HDD, but yeah, I just didn't feel that. Yeah, it was a good time as it is not implemented yet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, since RocksDB is designed to be SSD optimized, or sorry, yeah, RocksDB. I'm getting confused with LevelDB. Since RocksDB is designed to be SSD optimized, it would be interesting to see if there's, if there's a performance boost. Like, so I would imagine that you would get a better performance boost on HDD, which is what a lot of our big users are using. So I think that might actually be the best, the best advantage of this. So it'd just be interesting to see how that works.
I believe actually it will benefit. Like as I can see, like for now, as like for example, if you took a look at the recommitment speed, in the as for the RocksDB, it took like 3 seconds, and for the commitments in the with the PartyDB, it took like second like one second less. So I believe it just reads less data. I think overall, like I'm very optimistic, like in terms of benchmarking on the HDD.
I agree. We're always very optimistic, and that's why we benchmark and test to verify those claims. So I'm glad you're optimistic. Please show me the proof.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So should I just open the ticket for now, or
Upstream?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, or I can just spend some time on like implementing that actually.
No, I would just open ticket right away, and you want to prototype, go ahead, but at least you might receive a reply like 30 minutes later or the next day.
Yeah, okay then, yeah. I'll open it today after the call, yeah. But overall, I just don't have like anything to do right now, as I'm waiting for the merge of the Shamil's PR. Yeah. If you have something in mind, Nazar.
Yeah, you've removed the CUDA support. That's great. Would be nice to add OpenCL to our substrate node, or like the farmer.
You mean update the dependency, right?
Yeah, we have Subspace solving where there is a codec, and that codec is only CUDA compatible, so we basically need to replace that, and that might change an API a little bit. Hopefully not much. So that's
Sure.
immediate help.
Yeah, maybe something apart from it.
Yes, I have a question for Ivan. Sorry. For the integration with DSM, do you expect me to issue stream of pieces like it is now, and switch to bulk of structures later, or you expect bulk structures right away?
I mean, right now I expect like a stream. As for the like from the sync side, I mean, if in terms of like syncing, like in terms of in terms of giving away the pieces, right now API looks like this. You just supply the amount of pieces which you want to query on some plot. Yeah. So, and I guess it will this amount of pieces it will be fed to the DSM.
So I think, okay, guys, I think there will be actually both. So on the sender side, you want to have as little overhead as possible, which means as little RAM as possible, which means you'll probably read like one piece and send it, and then another piece and send it, or like maybe batches of 10, but not like 100. And on the receiving side, you control how much you are receiving. So you can probably create like allocate a buffer for, let's say, 1 megabyte or like 100 megabytes, and you can just fill that buffer and then send for batch encoding all at once, because that's what GPU plotting is optimized for big batches. So I think we will have both.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any other comments? I think, Ivan, we will find something probably today to work on. Don't worry about that. But thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Ozgan, do you have anything of note?
Not for the core protocol side.
All right, cool. Ved?
I do not have anything on the core protocol side last week. This week, as well, I think it's going to be mostly integrations, not protocol. Yes.
Okay, that's very quick. Daria, is there anything you want to share?
I mean, I've been working my way through the technical and formal specifications of Subspace and then of Spartan, the older ones. And I do have a compiled list of like a dozen questions and clarifications. So I would like to receive, and I think I will be finished with all this stuff like tomorrow. So maybe I think the best way would be to maybe schedule a meeting either with Jeremiah or you or both of you, so we can go through all of that and see what Jeremiah had in mind for me after doing this.
I think you can schedule a meeting with me tomorrow or day after tomorrow. You should see all of my availability on the calendar. Just pick the time and preferably closer to other meetings, and we can discuss.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to be there as well.
Okay.
Well, then I'll see what's free, and then if not, I'll message you on Discord.
Okay.
Tomorrow would be best because I'll be at consensus on Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
Okay. With that, it's my turn. Let me share the pull requests. I think you should be able to see this. So the first change was a relatively minor one. Basically, on the desktop side, we didn't have nice access to some of the data structures. And while we could access them, it wasn't nice in the sense that I would prefer for desktop application to not use Subspace node and instead use the libraries like a service. So this pull request basically decoupled the data structure, which we had like a wrapper serializable chain spec, which basically is a chain spec from Substrate that is wrapped in such a way that it can be serialized to something and deserialized from that something. That way, we can actually have chain spec of a secondary chain in the chain spec of the primary chain, because if we are setting that via chain extension, and that chain extension needs to be serializable into JSON. And the data structure of the chain spec itself isn't. There is like a special method to get a string out of it instead of just being instead of having the serialization deserialization implemented explicitly for whatever reason. Would be nice to change that. So this changed a little bit, and I also moved some of the supplementary data structures there. So basically, we have a different type alias. We have consensus and chain extension exposed from that library, so that this library can be used by our Subspace desktop directly, and don't need to rely on the node that has many more stuff that are not necessary. Like there is no point to compile clap just to throw it away. So that's a simple, relatively refactoring. Then we were switching again to a newer substrate, to a newer revision at some point. And every time we switch, and like in general, it takes a long time to compile. And there is this upstream problem in Cargo. It turns out that Cargo will not try to make shallow copies of the repositories. It will try to download the whole history, which means all of the branches that are there, all of the text that are there. And turns out the substrate repository is not very small. However, we have our own fork, because like me and Luchain, we submit different patches all the time. We have a branch for the Spartan from way back in the days in there. And generally, we have the fork, so we can use it. So I just deleted all of the branches that are not of interest for us, like all branches from Parity and GH pages and other stuff. And basically, we are using the same exact commit, just different repository. And that cuts our CI time significantly. It cuts this amount of data we need to download by about 10x, and number of objects, which is more important because it takes time to process them as a diff later. So that's a relatively simple PR again, but it helps quite a lot. And there is upstream issue in Substrate to make their repository more like easier clonable, I guess, but there is no resolution. So this is a very simple and efficient fix for that. Then after I did this, I actually noticed that we are serializing the chain spec to string and not to JSON. So it's like a JSON, and then we serialize JSON string into string, which means the way we were doing override for the boot nodes is actually not working. So it wasn't taking any effect. So I had to fix that. I basically need to like decode JSON and decode JSON again, and then I get actually my object, and then I need to serialize it twice, basically going backwards. It's tricky. I think the long-term goal would be to just implement serialize and deserialize on the chain spec itself. I guess the challenge is that they have two notions. There is like a raw chain spec and non-raw chain spec, and there is like a way to specify a parameter to the serializer to distinguish between those two. But I'll try to come up with something better. But for now, it's just like a bit of ugly mess to handle it properly. But it works, so I guess there's that. Then we've included chain spec for Gemini 1B. This is just the case where there was an error for the user and it wasn't really clear what's happening. There was just IO error. So here we're just printing the whole error in more explicit way. And we were able to find that they have resolve conf with some kind of software specifying additional parameters. And apparently our library, I think it's Trust DNS, it actually cannot decode that library. So the actual error was in resolve conf that user modified. And that was like only reproducible on his system. And without this, it's actually not possible to figure out what IO error that is. We thought it was like a permission error or something like that, but it was actually like related to DNS, which was interesting and unusual. But now we will at least print that error and whatever other error we have. Earlier in the past, we didn't print any error. It was just like error constructing the node. We went all the way to printing the whole error now. Yeah, this was a workaround for the forking process. Basically, not a very nice approach, but we have some expected public key that has to produce the first like about 33,000 blocks where we are seeding the history. And then there is also a check on the authoring side to not even try to claim blocks until we get to that height. So we're preventing the fork creation on the early history on upgraded nodes, but the old nodes are still free to do that. And later, Lucheng actually refactored that to not use the chain spec ID, but that's a different pull request. Then I'm not sure what is this. I cannot recall. Oh yeah. So we had this like forking, and our archiver is only designed to go forward. It cannot really go back. So the initial idea was to make it to like teach it to go forward and backward and like rebase to different forks. But in the end, it's not actually desirable. So I just did a bunch of pull requests, and I ended up with just adding a check in the end. And that check that is that whenever we are progressing with the archiver forward, we are keeping the best archived block hash that we know of. And then when it's time to archive a new block, we are checking that its parent is actually the same that we expect. Otherwise, we are just complaining that this is not like there was like reorg below the archiving point. And this is basically an error. And we are just like exiting the whole thing from here, and the whole node will crash. So just a handling for that, no like support for rebases and stuff. Yeah, the rest is just refactoring. It's like no fundamentally new functionality here, but I hope it makes more sense that way. Yeah, okay. This is another check, I believe, of the same sort. This time it's in where? Claim slot. Yeah, this is another check. It's above the previous check. Basically, here we are not trying to claim slots during the early history. And here we have a point at which we've enabled solution range adjustment. And that solution range was set to be equal to 10 terabytes initially. So we're just checking if the chain you are on is our Gemini chain, and that chain past this point still has initial solution range, which is like huge because of like 1 megabyte history size. Then you are clearly on the wrong chain. Like solution range adjustment wasn't submitted on your fork. So you just need to wipe everything and start over because you're on the wrong side of the history, basically. So that's like another check that fixes some of the other problems that we've observed on the Gemini 1B. Then there was a docs update. That update is about the fact that we have the this new message that can be printed, one or the other, that indicates you have a wrong history on your node and you need to start over. Just a small section for that. And then there was actually an incorrect number specified in one of the checks. This was too high because when I was seeding the history, I actually had specified 300 gigabytes, and I have several plots. And a few blocks after this point, there was actually a block authored by a different identity. So this check was preventing people from progressing beyond this block number. There are memes about 33 5x1 block in Discord. So that's why. And with this check changed, it actually allowed them to move forward. There are still a few nodes stuck on that block, by the way, but it will resolve as soon as they upgrade. And I updated docs again after discovering that actually keep blocks doesn't work because it assumes finalized blocks, and unless they are finalized, it will not remove any blocks. It will just keep everything. So everyone is essentially an archival node, and requirements are no longer 10 gigabytes. It's actually about 60. And hopefully we can fix that soon. But at this point, it's actually kind of beneficial because people will still see the history to others. And they also mentioned that you need to leave some to the OS because it seems like people are renting servers of 200 gigabytes and they specify 180 for the farmer. And then there is 50 more for the node. And then something is already occupied by the operating system. And it's rare that you have actually 200 gigabytes available. It's like more 180. So like it crashes for multiple reasons without the disk space. And like having a safe margin is never a bad idea. So that was like unfortunate for several users that discovered this problem, primarily with smaller plots. Like if you have a big plot, that like 8% we are reserving for the farmer can probably cover some of that. But if you have like 200 gigabytes or 100 gigabytes or 120, something like standard like that, it was actually a problem. And there is another pull request, which is not...
Question.
Yeah.
So if you have 100 gigabyte of space right now, you'll need to dedicate what's the breakdown between the reserved versus the plottable?
In practice, we have about 48 used by the node. I recommend 60, so we have some history to grow because it will not be pruned, at least not yet. Then in the FAQ message, I believe we are setting 10 gigabytes for the operating system, so you can like pull a new image, you can store some logs, you can install some packages. Like you need some kind of spare for the operating system itself, and the rest can be set for farmer. So if you have 100 gigabytes, it's really not much that you can plot.
It's about 40%, like 40 gigabytes.
Well, 40 gigabytes if you're like leaving 0 for the operating system and you actually have 100 and not like something like 80 after operating system installation.
Oh, so only about 20 gigabytes of actual plot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And we can't resolve this until we use the finality.
Yeah, we either need finality or we need some kind of pruning implemented by ourselves outside of what's available by default.
Can we do that pruning without requiring a fork? Is that something we can implement?
That's something to explore. I didn't check that yet.
Okay.
And there is last one pull request that's open. It's related to equivocation checks in votes. Basically, you can, as a malicious farmer, create a block which contains the same vote twice. Nothing wrong with that as of the old code, and that will cause equivocation. So this new update will basically check whether those two votes are identical. If they're identical, then the block is invalid. If they are not identical, like they have two signatures that are different, then it was actually equivocation. So the old code just didn't distinguish between those two cases. The new one will, and there are a few test cases which are checking those. There is a duplicate vote error that was introduced in the checking. So that's something that is still under review, but I think we'll get it through soon. And that should be it on this side of the code. There were some reports from me on the substrate side, but yeah, that's upstream work. Any questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, I think we are right at time. Unless you have anything else you want to add before we close the recording, we'll wrap it up. All right. Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube. Appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.